You're on the air.
Welcome everybody to this session with trauma tapping technique. Principally, we will do some other things also. Today is the 4th of November 2020. So yes, we are super happy to have you with us, and we will spend this 90 minutes together. And you will, when you turn off your connection, you will at least have probably a couple of more techniques to deal with stress and trauma. Yeah, I think that's what we can promise. Or what you say, Ulf?
Yeah, you will have some good laughs under the belt. You'll have some new buddies around the world, and you will have experienced what it's like to shift your state, and you will be able to help yourself and your neighbors and friends, even your enemies, which I do recommend, basically, because that's the best way to make them stop being your enemies, because people who are enemies are hurt people, and hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. So, and for some of us, we're living in or all of us, we're actually living in a world where we are very, in a time when we don't know what's going to happen next. So many things it's really a time of change, high energy and change. So we can all need to help ourselves to stay sane in these times. Yeah.
Whatever that is. So my name is Ulf Sandström. I'm one of the co-founders of the Peaceful Heart Network, which is the organization backing this training up. And our mission is to spread tools for resilience, for stress and trauma, and for resolving first aid for stress and trauma, which we've been doing since 2007.
Yeah, and my name is Gunilla Hamne. So yeah, so I'm also the co-founder of this Peaceful Heart Network, together with so many people all over the world, because that's our mission, to make this possible, which is this like this now, to have all your friends here from all parts of the world. So
yeah.
well.
So what we'd like to do is we'd like to get started, but I think we should get started just by saying that, you will be getting materials after. Don't worry about getting things right. Don't worry about remembering all of the points of the technique we're showing, because you will have materials after. So just immerse yourself as if you were to swim in a very beautiful lake or river somewhere, if you enjoy that. So why don't we start with one of the best greetings in the world?
Yeah, so we like to start with saying hello to you, and since we are now like almost 80 people, we will do it in our special way. So you can just follow us. So you start by just rubbing your hands a little bit. Here in Sweden, it's getting a bit cold, so that's a good way. And if it's warm, you can also blow a bit on your hands. Yeah, so when we have got this connection between your hands, you just stop, and then we will do this together. And so it goes like this: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you clap your chest or bring your hands to your chest, and then next 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you bring your hands to the front towards all or the rest of the participants here, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you go to the sky. And you can even raise your chin and look up in the ceiling and put a smile on your lips, or make a smile. I don't know what you call it in English, but anyway, smile. We say smile. Again. So once more time. So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you pops to your chest. And then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 to the front. Great. And then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 to the sky, and look up and smile, because this is all about whatever you do with your body will affect your mind, so we start from bottom up, and then one more time. So you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and on chest, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 to the front, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 to the sky. And look up and smile. Stretch up. Take a deep breath. And open up your whole self. Good. and then relax. Okay. And Ulf, what is it when you call this? Stretching up and looking up.
Well, we call it power posing, and power posing comes from, originally it comes from praying mantis. We're just kidding with you. It doesn't. It comes from any human being that is stretching up into the air. It's a pose of victory, a pose of power. It's from a TED talk with Amy Cuddy, power posing, and she did studies that showed that if you power pose a couple of minutes each day, it will change the chemistry of your body and your hormones, and it could actually, do more for you than some medications when it comes to actually feeling great. So power posing is, whenever you shift your body, you will shift your mind. Whenever you shift your mind, you will shift your body. When your mind is flexible and happy, your body will be flexible and happy. And the other way around, when your body is constricted and tense and manufacturing stress hormones, then you will feel lousy. So doing this, that simple thing of just holding your hands in the air will do that for you. But we also did this greeting before that, and that greeting, it has some kind of hidden meaning, we're guessing. So it was clapping, it was you, it was clapping and away, and it was clapping and up. Who would like to take a guess or a stab at what kind of meaning that could have?
Just give some suggestions because it has no correct answer.
All answers are correct.
I'd like to say that it's coming together, loving yourself, loving others, and loving the whole world and all of life.
Thank you.
I like that.
Great.
It's a sign that you're safe and you're connected to the present.
Wonderful. And someone's writing that bringing all your energies together and then tapping into other energies. Wonderful. And I think you, Jen 40, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, directing it towards yourself, directing it towards either somebody specific in your world or the screen, this group, and then the rest of the world and the universe.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else? One more. You bring out your voice into this space.
Okay. Yeah, I was seeing it as like clapping. So congratulating yourself, but putting a boundary actually, how I was seeing it forward, and then the whole world, victorious. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so that is all. I mean, because for some of us, this is a boundary. For some, it is like connecting to others, so it is like, so that's why we say there's no correct answer. And for us, it also is somewhere this that, when we're dealing with these things that we teach, that you first take care of yourself before you can take care of others, and then you need power somewhere from God, from universe, from the sky, from your higher self, from nature, whatever, it is your new president or, with whatever. So,
What's going on here?
no politics.
Yeah, we said no politics.
So we're going to send you, on our website, there is this video, this TED Talk with Amy Cuddy, which is beautiful, about her story and how she found this. It's not only this that is a power pose. There are many others also. But that's the main one and the one we love the most. And this greeting, actually, we learned it in Congo from this group of women who had survived gender-based violence in their area. And so we were, like we say, we are always together. So whatever you have, we like to have, interchanging these kind of ways of dealing with our emotions. And this greeting we learned from that group from City of Joy in Bukavu in Eastern Congo. While we were showing them some tapping, they showed us some dancing, they showed us, this greeting. And so that's how the world goes, isn't it?
That's how the world goes. And now we're about to learn so much more. I hope you're all ready and excited because this is going to be quite a trip. And that's what life is. It's a trip. Like Alan Watts would say, if you know him, it's that journey that we all make from the maternity ward to the graveyard. And let's make sure that it's fun. So we're going to be opening up the PowerPoint here. Gunilla, you can just say something really interesting because I'm having a little challenge here.
Okay, so I will tell something really interesting, and that is that we are, we love sharing these techniques. And for us, it started some years back. We came to know some of this tapping, and tapping in general. I mean, it consists of many different techniques or modalities, you would call it. The original one is TFT, thought field therapy, that was invented in California by Dr. Roger Callahan in the beginning of the 80s. A very successful psychotherapist who found it difficult to help people with trauma and phobias, and started experimenting with other things he had learned from acupuncture, from kinesiology, from healing touch and other things. And he came, to be the first one in the beginning of 1981 or something, to see that, okay, you can actually help people and deal with emotions this way. You don't have to speak all the time, because actually this part of our brain system, which is the logic part of the executive functions of the brain, is kind of offline when we are stressed, and especially when we are traumatized. You can see it on an fMRI scan that it actually doesn't work very well. That's why we get a bit stupid when we are stressed.
Here we go.
It has developed into other modalities. Did you want to add something? Let me just, which is the most widely spread, the emotional freedom technique, which was developed by Gary Craig. And from there somewhere, we have constructed this TTT, which is a simple version of all that kind of tapping, made so that anybody can use it as first aid, as we say, first aid for emotional.
And not only first aid, it's also a resilience tool. So it's just like soap and water. You can use it to clean a wound, and you can use it to clean your hands before dinner. So in both cases, it's going to have a great use, and that's what we do. So what we do is we try. Our main challenge is to spread these tools all over the world. And when we were asked to present at ASIP, the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, to which tapping belongs in the US, we did a presentation and we asked ourselves, what is the world? And that was a good question. So we'll share it with you. So the world, it's around 7 billion people. And they all pray to the different gods, asking them to just help them. So it's quite busy, And we have 64 million displaced. And we have a coronavirus pandemic, in case you didn't notice. So the question is, what can we do? So what do you suggest, Gunilla?
Yeah, I mean, it is like we say that to do something, we need to do it together. So we use a word from the language of Rwanda, where we started this work in 2007. And the word is turikumwe, which means we are in this world together, because we all depend on each other, even if many tend to forget it or don't want to recognize it's like us, not them, it's us. But for us, it is turikumwe, meaning we are here and we are dependent on each other and to exchange and to learn things. Yes.
Yeah. And so we're kind of inspired. We're inspired by many different things, but one person who actually aligns a lot with what we stand for and what we see as our mission is Professor Vikram Patel, a professor of global mental health, who has a vision he calls the Sundar Vision. And the Sundar Vision is an acronym. And the S is for simplifying the language, because the language of mental health is complicated. We talk about bipolar and schizophrenic and comorbid and all these things. And if you look at every single diagnosis in the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual, you'll find that stress and trauma are present in every single one of them. So he thinks that we should simplify it quite a lot.
Yeah. And unpack it, meaning that, if it has many different components, if it's to be able to reach those who are in need of any kind of assistance, you have to make it more separate things, so that you don't have to do everything at one time, but you can take one part of a whole big pack.
Yeah, and it also says that you should unpack the treatment so that they are as small and simple as possible for those common denominators, and then you should deliver them where people actually are. So, you know, in some countries, even if you provide a free training, 2 hours from a city, then or village, then some people don't have those 2 hours, and it doesn't matter if it's free. So it needs to be delivered where people are. So it should be something that can be delivered by anybody, by a layperson, a teacher, a priest, a local village helper. Anybody who is already there would be the perfect person.
And of course, affordable, because today many, treatments are not affordable for most population in the world. Um, those who are displaced, but also in societies where there is no healthcare system, which is, for everyone. And also in Sweden, where there is a healthcare system, but still to get help with emotional and mental health problems can be very expensive if you need to go to a private practice. So this.
And also to reallocate the services, because we're not saying that we want to turn the mental health pyramid upside down. So instead of everybody waiting until they really, really need expert help and standing in long lines, in Sweden alone, it could be 2 years before you get treatment for post-traumatic stress by the experts. And that's too long. That's way too long. So if everybody can do something, if everybody knows first aid for these emotional issues, then those who really need the expert help can go to the experts, and we can reallocate everybody else to laymen who actually can resolve maybe 60-70% of a lot of the symptoms with these simple tools.
Yeah, and all those, if you just stay with that picture, I mean, of course, it is like for us, this is our vision, but also what we have, done during these years, both, simplifying, unpacking, delivering where people are, making it affordable, like this seminar, it is for those, who donate, and others can join anyway, and reallocation, seeing to that we are showing this and teaching this to community leaders so that it actually reaches where the need is, or to people also who knows who is in need of knowing this, and that you can do these kind of techniques.
Yeah. So the focus here is on stress and trauma. And the reason we say focus on stress and trauma, it's in part that part of unpacking and simplifying, because if you look at mental health, stress and trauma are contributing to every single diagnose in the diagnostic manual. It's also the major contribution to people in addiction, because we've made an addiction recovery program where we focus on stress and trauma. And it turns out in a study in the US, 80% of women with addiction problems have unresolved traumas. And this also is part of the ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, which, if you look at it, usually shows up later in life as stress and trauma, and people in the criminal system are usually overrepresented by high points in the ACE system. So maybe it's not, maybe criminality is not in any way part of somebody's character. It's about what they have experienced and not resolved. And maybe addiction is the same thing.
Yeah, so for us, working on this and making, we want to contribute to a trauma-informed society, whether it's in school, in hospitals, between people, to understand how much that plays in all different kind of challenges in people's lives, much more than at least in many of the countries we have been. There is awareness of.
Yeah, and also when you look at cardiovascular diseases or diabetes or a lot of the physical diseases that are there, including stroke, a lot of them have stress is a major contributing factor. There's even another TED talk which says make stress your friend, because it turns out that if you're stressed about being stressed, you have even double stress. So relaxing is what it's all about. And stress is like a bucket. We call it the bucket of resilience, because when it's empty, that's how much resilience you have. And if it overflows, you will go into a crash state of mind, which means your amygdala will take over, your fight and flight center will take over, and your frontal cortex will be basically crashed. So to reset that, there's this tap at the bottom of the metaphorical bucket, which means that when you do things that lower your stress response, the tap opens and you reset the system. And sleep is one major contributing factor, but it's only one. Social interaction, human touch, feeling meaning in life, not feeling threatened. There are many parts of our life that contribute to this.
Yeah, and sometimes even sleep is not restful because we have too much stress, so we don't rest when we need to sleep. And the same with other, human touch in these times is challenging because we're not supposed to touch a lot, no, and also social interactions, all these challenges. So we need to help ourselves to find ways of dealing with ourselves and others in spite of that.
And when you're stressed, you're not prone to trying new things. So it's kind of counterproductive. You tell somebody who's really stressed, I can help you de-stress. They will say, not now, if you get the gist. So, for example, I'm in a Facebook group for people who are traumatized or chronically ill in some way with some kind of relation to trauma. And the group has united around something called internal family systems, which is a therapeutical method, which is, I believe is very, very good. I like it a lot. And what they're saying is, today they were writing, I've been doing CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, for a long time, and I'm not getting anywhere because I'm still stressed after 2 years, and I wake up at night and I can't sleep. And yesterday I learned these techniques that you're going to learn today, the tapping and the havening. And I just woke up at night and I did the exercise. It took 5 minutes and I slept the whole night. And that may sound like a miracle if you've walked around with bad sleep for 10 or 20 years, but it's not a miracle. It's neurobiology, and that's how simple it is if you do the right thing.
Exactly. So there are many different ways, Yeah. But I mean, so we go to this, I mean, our specialty is really, I mean, it's stress, but specifically trauma. That's why this technique is called TTT, trauma tapping technique, because that's where we come from. We started working with people who were, had gone through war and genocide, and then to see how a traumatic reaction is encoded. I mean, what is a trauma? Because as you know, trauma is individual. It is not that one event will for everybody be traumatic. So you can actually not call something a traumatic event because you don't know how people will react, because we are all different.
And I'll add to that, and that is the criteria in the DSM-5. The criteria of trauma is that you have experienced a traumatic event, which nobody can decide for you what it is. So that needs a paradigm change because it's a wrong definition of what a trauma is.
Yeah, because first of all, it depends on, I mean, your what we call your electrochemical landscape of your brain, or not only the brain, the whole system. I mean, where you are, what experiences you have from before, like this ACE study that shows that, I mean, from abuse as a child, there is more probability of having other challenges, means you easily be stressed. Being born by a stressed parent will also change some of the proteins of the genes, making a person more prone to be stressed or then traumatized. So that's what we call the landscape of the brain, the electrochemical landscape. Where are you? How stressed are you already when something happens? That will also impact on what reactions will be imprinted in your system.
And that's why we call it the bucket of resilience, because if it's empty, you have more resilience. If it's full, you have very little. So once you have been stressed or traumatized, the risk of being repeatedly traumatized is multiple traumas is very high. Actually, your chemical landscape is altered for 6 to 7 days after you have been severely traumatized, so that the risk is really, really high. And that's why some people say you should just go back to work and stick to it like a man or a woman or whatever ideology you have, but that's just completely wrong.
There's in the chat, yes. Is it true that tapping can reduce the stress by 41%, or is the percentage showing higher? Actually, percentage, I have no idea, and I don't know where this figure comes from, this 41%. What we see is that, yes, it reduces, and there is studies more on, I mean, for example, the level of cortisol, that it decreased and like 27% or something after a session of EFT. So there definitely, when you look at this biomarkers, you can see different, like blood pressure also on some, on pulse. So that it reduces, but I mean, percentage, I have no idea.
Well, we do have an answer, though. We have an answer for every single question you're going to be asking tonight, and we're going to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And when you leave this session, this answer is also the answer to any question you will ever have in your whole life. And if you ever run into a question where this isn't the answer, you just text us and we will buy you lunch, okay?
Wherever you are.
Wherever you are, no matter what kind of lunch you want. So the answer is, it depends.
Depends. It depends, because it always depends, just like we say about the landscape. It depends on who you are, what you're trained in, what your experiences are, where you are, with whom you are. I mean, so there are so many things. And so that's why, and Georgia is writing that Peter Stapleton, which is our friend and colleague, has done a lot of research. Yes, there is plenty of research. She has written a book called The Science Behind Tapping. So that one we recommend, of course. We are also doing now ourselves our second study together with Peter Stapleton, who is a psychologist from the Bond University in Australia, one of the top researchers on tapping.
Yeah. So here comes the number 2 part of encoding trauma, which is inescapability. When you perceive a situation to be inescapable, that's one of the 3 things that have to be present for you to be traumatized. And remember, this is also extremely subjective. Nobody can measure what you fantasize is inescapable. For some, it is physical. For some, it's your rumor, your reputation, your social standing, your looks, your homeostasis, your pain, your body, a limb, money, property, something that you perceive as inescapable.
Yeah, as if you're trapped in one way or another. Or so, and meaning, I mean, that it is something that you're risking. Your system says, I'm going to lose something that is very meaningful for me, meaning something you're attached to, money, your life, your reputation, anything that is very important. So it can be also, it depends on who you are, what you're attached to, whether you feel it. For some, if something disappears, it doesn't matter because they didn't feel attached to it. But for others, it is, what will happen? How will I do? It is like, so it is so different. And if you look at, there is our other favorite person, which is Bessel van der Kolk, a psychiatrist from Massachusetts, or I mean, he's from the Netherlands originally. He has written a book called The Body Keeps the Score. He has, for example, done a lot of research on different techniques specifically related to trauma. But one of the things that he studied was 2 people who were in the same car accident, and they completely react in different ways. One shutting down and the other one going into panic. So it depends who you are, where you are, what happens.
Yeah. So when somebody says, I believe I'm traumatized, and then you say, why do you believe that? And they say, because I had this experience when I was a child, that doesn't mean they're traumatized by that. And when somebody says, I'm not traumatized because I've dealt with all that stuff, that doesn't mean they're not traumatized, because the body has its own memory. And that's why the book from Bessel is called Why the Body Keeps the Score. So some people who have had this, maybe a childhood abuse or something that they have actually forgotten. And then 20, 30 years later, they go to a yoga session and they do a pose in yoga where the body remembers something from that position, which actually can be a full-blown trauma. So then it's good to have these tools because you can actually resolve it in a matter of minutes.
Yeah. So we thought that we will.
Yeah, this is just a cliffhanger. So trauma is expressed in 4 different ways. The acronym is CASE, and we're not telling you about it, okay? Because first we're going to tap on the tension that is created by not knowing this.
By not knowing this and just being reminded about what it is actually that can be traumatizing. So we're just letting in one more person. So yes, we want to, have you going on this TTT trauma tapping technique, which is of course, it is something that is very easy, but sometimes we even realize that we think it's so easy that we just whoops do it, and then we continue talking about other things. But now we're going to practice it more so that you have it in your fingertips after this 90 minutes. Welcome. Who was it who came?
It was
So,
Joe.
it was Joe. Welcome, Joe. So the tapping is, and for some of you, you have done this before, so you just hang on and you know what you say, you come with us, hang on, is that correct? Yeah. And we just do it together. So you can just start by sitting up a bit, and like I love this expression of our friend Sadhguru. It's like you have your spine comfortably erect, you know, so you sit up, so you don't sit like a, you know, like what do you call it, pose, like like
Like a beanbag.
beanbag, but you straight up, you know, but not as a military or but just comfortably erect. You put your feet in the ground, that means most of you in the floor. So, and you take a couple of deep breaths so you can breathe in. We breathe in together. Hold the breath for a little while and then breathe out. And then again, breathe in. Hold your breath and breathe out. And then you can just close your eyes, or you stay with your eyes closed for a while. And then you just check in with yourself. You don't go looking for that big T, but just for something that feels a bit uncomfortable or something that stresses you when you think about it. And then you rate it for yourself between 0 and 10, what in psychology it's called SUD, subjective units of distress, meaning that from 0 is no discomfort and 10 is very much. So you just grade it in between 0 and 10 for yourself, just to see if this then if it's 41% or if it's less or more that of the stress that can be reduced by tapping, or nothing, or all.
5 fingers, 41%. That's going to be a challenge. Or 10
And
fingers.
fingers, I mean, what number you come to when you have found something that is feeling uncomfortable when you think about it, you can put up your fingers. So we just, you know, can see
more or less where you are.
Okay. Just for checking, you know, because this is the only way, since everything is subjective, everything depends. It's only you who can feel what you feel. Nobody else can take a blood sample or anything to know what stress level you are feeling right now, even if you could. Okay, good. Sorry. And from there, it's not Corona. And it is, and from there, then I'm just going to let him Doreen.
I'll do the let-ins.
So then we just do the tapping. So we start on the side of the hand. It's like this. I mean, the side where I can take off this one, that we call the karate top. It was the one I would learned when I was, because I was trained in TFT, this original tapping modality, thought field therapy. And then they call this the karate chop. Okay, and from there, you will go and you put your thumbs on your temples, and then you do like opening the forehead, giving a massage to the frontal lobe, meaning giving some blood circulation to that part of the brain that we mentioned before, that is not very much online, but rather offline when we are stressed. So just giving it a chance to have some better activity, okay? And then from there, you just tap with 2 or 3 fingers where the eyebrow starts. And you don't tap very hard and not super loose, but it should be felt. And we do it like 10, 15 times. But now you can just follow a bit what we are doing. And if you're closing your eyes, we will just say what you're doing. And then you follow the eyebrows to the outside of the eyes. Next time you tap here on the bone, and one of the fingers will probably reach into the temple. And don't forget to breathe. Okay, and from there you go under the eye, so it will be on the cheekbone. Very good. Perfect. Looks fine. And then you take one of your hands and you continue between your tip of your nose and the upper lip, like on the roots of the teeth. Okay, good. And then you go from there, you go around the mouth, and then you go between the mouth and the chin. Okay, wonderful. Well done. And from there we go to the chest. So you do all over the chest. I mean, there is one specific point, which is like under the highest points of the collarbone. But we do this, and we call this actually gorilla tapping. We started doing this work in the area where the mountain gorillas dwell, in the misty mountains of Virungas. And they do this very well. Okay. And then you put one hand on your shoulder and then you tap on the side of your chest. So it's not up in the armpit, but it's on the side where a bra strap could pass, or if it does. So if you know where it would pass, more or less there, just on the side. Okay. And from there you go to the finger. So you start with your little finger. So it's on the side of the finger, on the inside, just beside the nail, but on the side of the finger. Okay. And then the next one, which is the ring finger. And the next one. Next one. And thumb also on this side. Fantastic. Well done. And then we do one more on the chest just before, of course, from all these years we have been working with this, we see that most of those who say one point or one area that gives most relieving effect, it is the chest.
And like Kurt says, Tarzan tapping.
Exactly, Tarzan tapping.
But he got it from the gorillas, so
Yeah.
I think you should credit where credit is due.
Yeah, the chimpanzee, yeah, it's from the chimpanzee. Okay, and there, then you let down your hands, and then you do this breathing again. So you breathe in. Will you let Iris come in, Ulf?
I do. I'll take care of that. Don't worry. I'll take everybody who comes.
Breathe out. So it's through the side with your mouth. So it's like breathing in with your nose. Holding the breath for a while and then breathing out with your mouth.
And do notice that when you breathe in a lot of air, you actually will get perfect posture because your lungs will straighten out your spine.
And then you just repeat again, because we always say we have make it 2 rounds. So then you do on the other side. So you take the other hand, the other karate chop. And if you don't remember it like me now, it doesn't matter which one you do. Again, but it's good to do this crossover exercises. And then we do this massage.
Good, but not crucial to cross over. And it's totally okay to do only on one side. And some people only have one arm, or the other one is, hurting or something, and that's fine.
And then you tap on where the eyebrow starts. Now you already know this. So you go to the outside of the eye. So it is like question mark of 5 points in the face. It's like whoops, whoops. So here outside the eye and then under the eyes. And as Ulf said before, we have videos and printed materials. There is a smartphone app in 27 languages, so you just can't miss it. There is no excuse for not learning this and showing it to others because it's so easy. So now under the nose, if you have your eyes closed.
And also you can use the app to actually learn languages or to translate together with somebody, because everything in the app, if you select one language and switch language, the words are in the same place. So you can go from Arabic to French to English to Tigrinya to Danish to Russian to Chinese.
Yeah, it's actually a language app. All over your chest, Tarzan, gorilla, chimpanzee, whatever. Here's also the oxytocin. And also here, because somebody was writing, so here you have your sternum, which is your breastbone, and behind there is the thymus gland, which is very important when it comes to immune.
So Denny, you're asking, is there a specific count for breathing in and holding before letting out? And the answer is, it depends, right? But if you just want to have, we're going to talk about breathing. If you want to, you can just go breathe in, short, hold your breath for a few seconds and breathe out with a sigh, whatever that means for you.
Yeah, so now we go to the fingers. As we know, I mean, the breathing is the way you're communicating with your nervous system. So the breathing, of course, is very, very crucial and very central.
What is ASL? Carroll, New Mexico. Has it been recorded in ASL?
ASL, what is ASL?
Not sure. Sign language, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, American Sign Language. Okay, no, not yet. If you know sign language, please just send us an email and we can do a session together where you can translate it for us as we do it. And we'll record it and give it to everybody who knows American Sign Language.
But we have worked with many groups of people also who are impaired of hearing. And it's, since this is just, I mean, I don't have to say anything. You just follow what I'm doing. So it's easy. So now I don't. And then
It would be cool to have it in sign language. I think that would be fantastic. Let's do that. Good idea, Carol.
And then breathe out. And then breathe in again. Hold the breath and then breathe out. And then you can just close your eyes or hold your eyes closed if they're already closed. And then you go back to what you were thinking of in the beginning, that you rated between 0 and 10, and with this SUD, subjective units of distress, and just check what is different now. What do you notice now? Just check in, whatever it is. And then you can put up your fingers, and then, or if you want to write something in the chat, you're most welcome. Just notice what is different compared to when we started, okay?
And as you're sitting there thinking, looking at everybody, if you are looking at everybody, some people go from a high score to a really low score, and some people go from a high score to another score, and you're thinking, oh my God, did I not succeed, or was it better, or didn't it work for me? And the answer is, it depends. It will always lower your stress, but there's a big difference between stress for something in the past that never will repeat. For example, when you forgot your homework in 4th grade, that stress, if it was traumatic, will be resolved and never come back. Usually goes to 0. But if you have stress because somebody assaulted you in a park while you were out jogging and that person was never prosecuted, it will probably go down a bit, but then it will stay because your amygdala doesn't have a closure on that. So that means that, you know, for some reason, it means that it might stay at 4 or 5 or even 6. And also, there's a third issue, which is you might have this, we call it stress, but stress is like, I say it's like ice cream that comes in so many flavors. So the ice cream of stress comes in the flavor of sorrow, of anger, of frustration, of despair, of apathy, of depression. You know, there are so many flavors of stress. And it could be up here at 8 or something, and then it goes down to 5, but it was at angry, and it went down to sorrow, which means, and not sorrow, but sorrow. So it goes all the way down to 0, but there is a 5 of sorrow there.
Yeah. So there are some questions here about that. I mean, one is then continuing like what you were talking about, Ulf. So do you continue the process until you reach 0? So that relates to what you were saying. I mean, it is like, what we say is that you continue until you feel comfortable. I mean, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you can continue another time. And sometimes, as we say, doesn't go to 0 because you need some kind of tension because something is ongoing, you know, it isn't finished. And then it's like when we met refugees in Lesbos in Greece in 2015, they still needed some, you know, they needed their adrenaline to just continue, just to take decisions to go further. They didn't want to settle down and, you know, and relax. So it depends on. And then it was another question, and that was Jen, and we talked about box breathing on Humanity Rising. Why wasn't it mentioned today? We haven't finished yet, so you know. You're running ahead. So just
I thought you were finished.
no, we haven't finished yet. We still have.
There's a half hour left.
36 minutes left. So just we fast.
Hang in there.
Yeah. So what else was it? Wow, really felt difference. Yeah, and many of you really right that, you know, it's something that that shifted from 6 to 3, or from somebody wrote to 0, which is fantastic. And then you see, even if it just was this much change for you, you know, may have been from 7 to 6, but still just something changing says that it is, you know, there's something here. And that's how this whole tapping started. Oh, there's something here. It's something changed, something shifted, you know, from doing this tapping. So congratulations to everybody. That's how we always finish. Congratulations.
So we want to try one more thing here now because we had so many questions about it. So what we'll do is we'll do a quick breathing exercise before we go into some of the symptoms of trauma and how we can relate to them. So for breathing, there are so many ways of breathing. The most important one is actually that you do it. Because when you stop doing it, you have around 11 minutes to go. And you could say that you're born with a lifespan of 11 minutes and you prolong it one breath at a time. So breathing is connected to your heart rate. And in Chinese medicine, your breathing and your lymph system are like the keys to your immune system. But the cool thing here with breathing is that when you do it in different ways, you can actually get control of your nervous system. So I hope that you see me and I'm not lagging. Gunilla, am I lagging?
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, so why don't you do the breathing instead? Because I don't know what's going on.
No, but it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so we can do the breathing. I mean, the most simple one is just breathe in and breathe out. And again, breathe in. And this is just taking control of the breathing. Breathe out. And again, breathe in. And breathe out. And the last time, breathe in. And breathe out. So that is the, I mean, the basic. It's, I mean, it's in a way what we did when we were born, breathing in, breathing out. But it is like all those basic things are the ones that gets complicated when we are stressed or traumatized. That comes from the, I mean, from the brainstem. And the second one now comes from specifically for Jen, box breathing or tactical breathing, because sometimes we say this is used by the US military, you know, by the Marines, which is when you're working with people who, you know, what is this, you know, breathing, what about it? So because it is like that, to have a breathing is necessary if you're going to be focused. And some of those who needs to be focused are guys who are going into battle, which is of course one side, but we all need it. It's just that you need to adjust to who you're talking to. Anyway, so box breathing is then you breathe in. Or you want to do it, Ulf?
I can do the box.
Yeah.
Breathe in and you hold your breath and you breathe out and you hold your breath. So breathing in, you activate the sympathetic nervous system. Holding your breath, you're pressing more oxygen into your heart. Breathing out, parasympathetic and parasympathetic. So box breathing, or 4-4-4 breathing in seconds counting, is basically getting more control, more oxygen to the brain, and more parasympathetic activation, right? And you can add something to this. You can actually add a smile, make it a silly smile, you know, one that your friends would be going, what are you thinking of? And then you make a glazed look on your eyes, like you're daydreaming, because that actually activates your parasympathetic nervous system too, because it's the opposite of tunnel vision. And now the next round, when you're breathing out, you will make a tone, a simple tone, whatever that is.
Yeah, I see the analyze this, who I don't know the name of, is writing. We used box breathing as I used to facilitate on with medium risk for violent offenders. Yeah, wonderful.
And now the last one, breathing out on a tone, you add the gorilla tapping. Hold your breath and just breathe out and make a tone and go, ow.
Hey. Again, breathe in. Hold your breath and then tap.
Ow.
You because also the toning is not singing, it's just letting a sound from your out breath. So there's for toning, humming, all these singing makes your brain so happy. It's like bringing the brain to a gym, and it gets the exercise, it gets to communicate. So all this toning, it also makes your, the beginning of the vagus nerve, which also controls a lot of, or navigates the parasympathetic nervous system, gets super happy from all those things that we do with our vocal cords. So that's great.
And also singing and in choir actually brings a group of people more together because it synchronizes your breathing and your heart rate. So there's studies showing that singing together will lower stress if you do it in a group even more than singing alone. And another funny thing is that laughing together, people usually laugh louder than they would when they are alone, which is kind of interesting.
I mean, it's not strange. I mean, you feel like you're among kins, isn't it? You laugh and other people laugh. That's nice. So this question, I don't understand, Jill. How does holding after out-breath, so holding the breath? Yeah, it is still, I mean, holding the breath also activates the parasympathetic nervous system, especially when breath. And also when you hold your breath, when you have in breath, that presses blood into your heart, it is like gives you more oxygen.
And you do not have to do the box thing, but if it helps you to keep counting, that's fine. You can do it in your head. Imagining is enough. And remember, when you're writing a question, just answer it yourself, saying it depends, and smile and going, oh yeah, shit, I forgot.
Danny writes, I'm so relaxed right now. Wonderful. Yeah, so should we,
yeah,
so
we're going to continue.
I want to do favorite breathing also, because that's the one I do several times a day. So I want to share it with you. Okay. Is it okay with you, Ulf?
Of course.
My favorite breathing is spread by Dr. Weil, and it's Andrew Weil, and it's called 478 because you breathe in 4, hold your breath for 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, and breathe out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then you breathe in 4, and then you hold your breath 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you breathe out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more time. You breathe in, hold your breath 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you breathe out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is so they are different. First just taking control. Box breathing is also, more control of your breathing. And this is a relaxing breathing. So for those who are more going into low of depression and already too slow breathing, this is not a good idea. But for all of us who are rather go up and get more stressed, this is the perfect. I mean, I use it, I think, 5 times a day at least. Before I do my meditation in the morning, I do it also, everything, just to focus. If you have this tendency of being very active. I'm interested in how this can be used with someone with dissociative disorder. I have a client. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really get that question.
What you can do is when somebody dissociates, tapping will associate them again in the body. Dissociation is basically it's like somebody is trying to escape from their own body. The mind is trying to escape from the body. That's what dissociation is, because you can't stay there anymore because it's not safe and you cannot escape in any way. So, and it's not safe to be in the body because the body is feeling all these really bad feelings. So that's also another reason why you don't want to be there. So you can use tapping and you can use havening when they are dissociating, and you will, like Heather have positive results. Definitely. It's all about creating safety. So I'd like to jump into the PowerPoint now because we want you to have a little more information before we leave you. So here we go. I just wanted to show you there's this web page, which is kind of cool, which has, it's called exhaler.com. And there you can try different breaths. You can try defaults, square, pranayama, ujjayi, and just, set different timings for we're breathing in and breathing out. So just to give you an idea, and there's loads of stuff that's relevant and neurobiologically, depending on if you're breathing in or breathing out or hold your breath or not. But we don't go into all of it. The most important one is that you breathe in rhythm. Because when you breathe in rhythm, your heart rate variation will slow down and get in touch with that rhythm. Because when your breathing rhythm and your heart rate variation are out of sync, that's what happens when you're traumatized and stressed and you don't function very well. So we want to get back to trauma, how it expresses itself in your system, because if, like we were saying in the beginning, if the case is that you can no longer say if somebody is or isn't traumatized depending on their life experience. I didn't have a traumatizing experience, so it can't be trauma. That's wrong. I had what could possibly be a traumatizing experience according to the DSM, so I must be traumatized. That's wrong too. So here are the 4 channels, the symptoms of trauma, how they show up in the human system. And if these symptoms are there, it means you're traumatized. And everybody is, so don't worry about it, and it can be fixed. So the first one is cognitive, that's the C in case. So it is conscious and subconscious thoughts. That's what it is, right? Conscious and subconscious thoughts. And then you have autonomous functions of the nervous system reacting automatically, which is like heartbeat or palpitation or sweating. Somatization, long-term effects in the body, and emotional effects. So if we go through them, how they actually express themselves, you'll find that the cognitive ones could be difficult to think about yourself and definitely difficult to mentalize something. So if you go into therapy and start analyzing something while your body is reacting as if it was in danger, that will not allow you to mentalize. It will only re-traumatize you, which is why exposure therapy can be very dangerous and detrimental.
Mm. Yeah, and also, I mean, the autonomous will give you some acting out, defensive rage. I mean, those things that I mentioned, that cravings, closing down, phobias, everything that comes from, you know, that part of the brain that goes without our, you know, thinking of doing something. It's autonomous. And the somatization, like we mentioned before, that some things can be when you come into do some exercises or yoga, and that the body has the memory, the body memory. But it can also be stiffness and restlessness and headaches, of course. I mean, all these things that gives effect in the body, and there's so many of them. I mean, they're numerous. What you say, numerous.
But just knowing that, you know, chronic pain, that actually chronic pain or falling out of your bed or even hernia, you know, having a backache could be a sign of trauma. Headache, migraines, you know, a lot of these symptoms actually that you believe are physical, you would go to a medical doctor for them when you actually should be going to a mind doctor and hopefully someone that knows tapping or havening.
Yeah, and that is the thing with this tapping. You don't have to know what it is, actually. I mean, if you don't know what is it, you know, I have this pain, you can just try to do this tapping for it. Just focus on that somatization, that pain, that feeling, that sensation in the body, and see what it is. I mean, coming back to the question about dissociation, if you look at Peter Levine, who has written the book, the Awakening the Tiger, who has created the technique somatic experience. I mean, one of the things he does is what we call the do-in. It is clapping just over the body, just to see where is this container. I mean, just to bring you back into the body. And tapping does also the same. That's why it is, you know, very efficient, very effective when it comes to those kind of dissociative challenges. Mm.
Yeah, and also emotionally, you know, it could be your mind could actually make it hard for you to access your emotions because your emotions are too painful. So you find a way to dissociate from them so that you become intellectual, and that way you don't need to process the fear that is there, and that usually just prolongs it for a long while. So
And those consciously, of course, it's not that we think, oh no, I'm going to stay away from it. It is like the way that the body.
it's automatic. Yeah. So
Okay.
what we do more is attachment theory, which comes from, you know, you grow up with a narcissistic or abusive or drug dependent parent that doesn't provide the safety you need, it will affect your attachment patterns. And that means that you will have issues in your whole life where it will be hard to relate to other people because you haven't really found out how to relate. And this doesn't only affect your relationships, it affects your work relationships. It affects how you can, relate to your neighbors or anything. So it's tapping and havening actually helps out in those cases as well.
Yeah, so now we have to come to this havening because not everybody knows what havening is, and some have asked it also in the chat. What is this havening? So we are going to do that also before we finish here, and also answering the question that came now, that when you do the tapping, yes, that is correct. Either you focus on some physical sensation, or you go to that, just like we did when we did the tapping. You bring out something to your mind. You connect to something that is, and that's what we're going to show in this
Could I
slide.
just ask Donald, who's writing on the screen right now, if you could refrain from that because it's turning up on every screen. So yeah, thanks. That's great. So what we have here is we have the model that we're using for psychosensory therapies like this. It's that sensory input in some form will affect your body, which is an electrochemical organ, so that you get an electrochemical response. So this is not something that you're dependent on believing in for it to happen. So it's not that, if I believe in tapping, it will work, because if you have a broken leg, you don't have to believe in it for it to heal. This is mechanical. It's neurobiological. It's electrochemical. If you do the tapping or the havening procedure 5 minutes, it will work. The talk part, if you're going to be talking or not, has to do with if you need to keep it in focus or if you want to distract yourself from it. When it comes to trauma, just doing it in silence or talking about something completely different as you do it are the safest ways. We will check that out when we try havening before we end.
Yeah, so the question was, this about focusing. So that is, and here, if you go back to the other picture, the sensory input can in this case be then the tapping is a sensory input. The havening that we will do after the next slide is a sensory input. There are many other things, just holding yourself,
EMDR is sensory input. Listening to gongs is sensory input because it's a sound input. Listening to prayer is sensory input. Listening to smell therapy, aromatherapy is sensory input. Dance is sensory input. Massage is sensory input. Anything that comes to your senses and stimulates in a way that calms down your system is sensory input that can create the electrochemical. Okay, so here's a book that we recommend, When the Past is Always Present. It's by Ronald A. Rudin. He's a medical doctor. He's the one who researched tapping, which is to the left here, a bunch of years. I don't remember if it's 16 or 18 now, but when we started out, it was 16. And so the tapping, to find out what the mechanisms were inside the body, a scientific model of the neurobiology, he came up with that it is a delta wave that is produced. And the delta wave is the one that is produced when we're calm. When we're in a calm state, we get a delta wave. We can get that from hypnosis. We can get it from meditation. We can get it from tapping. We can get it from a glass of wine. The point is, if you want to get the delta wave going in a good way, tapping is one of the fastest ways that we have ever found. And one of the other ones is what Rudin constructed when he said, so it's a delta wave. Is there any other way we can create a delta wave? And that's where havening technique comes from. It's sensory input in another way that creates a delta wave. So same neurobiological foundation, same science, same effect, different application. Which one should you choose? Well, you'll just have to try both and find out for yourself. So the trauma tapping is doing it on all these points of the body. And I'm going to stop there.
Yes, let's do the havening.
So that we actually do the havening.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, there are some questions. We're gonna reply to the question of Debbie if we have time. The pattern. Is it important to follow the exact pattern you showed us in tapping? No, it's not. It's just that we show it in the same way every time. Otherwise, we cannot do materials that we can share with you. So that is, but if you miss one point to do it another way, probably not. The different parts of the body, we can send you there is a sketch, what you say, what you call it, schema, like a plan.
Schematic, a plan.
Plan for what point is what, but there is also research shown that, I mean, in a way, it probably doesn't matter so much exactly what you tap on, but these points that we are using are also acupuncture points. So it depends on, I mean, so when you come from the eastern part of the world that we call the eastern part, and the science of the Chinese medicine, these are acupuncture points.
Yeah, so Hannah has a question as well. She's saying, has a client ever shown a bad reaction? Well, first of all, you need to define what a bad reaction is. And second of all, we've been dealing with the most traumatized and vulnerable populations probably in this world during the last 10 years. Survivors of genocide, torture, refugees, women victims of gender-based violence. And I usually ask Gunilla when we get this question, Gunilla, how many times has somebody had a really bad reaction after tapping during all these years? Is that a 3 or a 0? That's a 0. 0, 0, 0, 0. 0 times.
I mean, it is actually 0, which is crazy. I mean, if we had time, I would ask Adraim Abe, who is here, who is a colleague who comes from Darfur, who also has been doing these kind of workshops with the refugees in Chad. But it is like, you know, so far we have never seen, because these techniques obviously taps into the nervous system in a way that decreases the level of stress in the body.
So what I'd like to do right now, because we're getting lots of questions here and we want to show you the Havening, but the beautiful thing of this is that we can do it as we answer the questions. And that's how you can debrief an incident. That's how you can, you know, you bring a child and they're going, it's something happened, you know, tell me about it. But can I please do this at the same time? So what we're going to do is we're going to try some self-havening on the shoulders right here. So you put your hands up on the shoulders and pull them down over the arms, up on the shoulder, down on the arm, up on the shoulder, down on the arm. And meanwhile, we can say, do you find tapping is more effective than havening? Well, you know the answer. It depends. Sometimes tapping is more effective. Sometimes havening is. They're still working on the same mechanism. It's delta waves being created. If a person has a panic attack or a headache or is sensitive to sound and touch, then maybe havening is to be preferred. We usually mix them. So we tap have or happen or tavening, you know.
Yeah. It's havening, tapping, breathing, doing, yoga. I mean, we do everything that people find, you know, that we notice, oh, this probably is good here, you know. So there's no limit to, oh, you cannot mix this with that. The other way around, actually.
And Priscilla, I just want to say one thing to Priscilla there. You have a friend who felt very, very bad after she vomited, but after she felt better. Well, the thing is this. What your nervous system will do when you go into a fear reaction, it will empty your stomach. Because when you are chased by a saber-toothed tiger, having a full belly will slow you down. And if it actually bites you and punctures you, if you have food in your belly, you will get sepsis. You will get a blood infection and you will die. So to save your life in case of danger, you will vomit or you will shit yourself.
Yes.
And if that makes sense, you know, it's what actually happens there is, that's why probably that happened. Do you base the techniques you use of logic or intuition? Do you base the techniques you use of logic or intuition? I would say that we do both. And it will depend, again, on the situation. Is it a situation that requires logic, or is it a situation where intuition suddenly speaks to us and says, I wonder if this is the right thing right now?
It depends on what you mean by intuition, actually, and what is logic. Is logic intuition? Is intuition never logic? I don't know. You know, for me, it is, they go hand in hand.
Now you sound like said guru.
But
is it really logic? Is it intuitive?
I also want to say something about puking. For example, in yoga tradition, you practice how to puke, because that's the cleansing. So I mean, it all depends on what you look at. And in Western medicine, or puking, then you're sick. It's not. It's a way also of getting stuff out of your system. So it all depends.
So
Okay.
that's one type of havening. The other type is when you do this with your hands, and it should be as if you have a glass pearl between them. You don't want to drop it and you don't want to crush it. And this is the easiest way to, if you have a group of people in a debrief situation, maybe you have macho police, men and women, and you go, while we do the briefing from this tragic incident that just happened, could we just do this together? And this actually is less woo-woo than that, even if there's science for it. So there was a question here I wanted to answer as we do the hand havening. Tapping raises my blood pressure. Is this unusual or harmful? First of all, I would say, how do you know that it was the tapping and not something else that just had to raise your blood pressure? Because they happen at the same time. Well, that's possible, but it depends. And now what will happen with tapping is it's never going to raise your blood pressure. What it will do is it will lower your stress response. Now, if that means that you are opening a box or a door to an experience that you have been suppressing, that might trigger adrenaline, and adrenaline will raise your blood pressure, because that's why blood pressure goes up, because you have adrenaline, which is because of stress. So if it does, it's because you're on the road to a healing process, and I would be quite calm and keep tapping or havening for a while.
There are actually even research done when it comes to tapping and blood pressure, and that it actually lowers if you have a high blood pressure, that it lowers. So it depends on, of course, where you are on the diastolic and systolic, what it is that happens. And then somebody writes the recommended book was $60 on Amazon. Do you know another place to find it cheaper?
Yeah, you guys download the tab before we finish. Maybe we can send it out to you afterwards as well, because there's lots of good tips there. But to keep the time and to learn this stuff, we won't be reading all of it unless it's a specific question that we should be answering right here and now. So Lillian says, I think that every time we work with stored memories of any sort, well, they are all stored, there will be some kind of release, whether immediate or afterwards. I would just say to that when trauma is encoded, it is encoded with a release and a response. But if you think about what you ate for lunch 3 days ago, you will notice that that memory probably, it depends, will not, release a gigantic response unless it was the best or worst lunch you ever had.
Yeah, and that comes to the question, how long? So what is said is that when we connect to something, I mean, something that has happened to us, something that gives that emotional reaction, there is said to be like a 10-minute window that if we do something during that time that calms down the nervous system for at least 5 minutes, that will, depotentiate this reaction and create this delta wave in the brain.
You can keep havening. And we'll just show you really fast the trauma encoding. So when there is a moment in life when your landscape, in combination with a meaning of what's happening for you and your sense of inescapability, if that adds up to the point where your amygdala goes, we are in danger of dying or losing something very, very important, then everything that comes through your senses will create a trigger that is located in your amygdala, and this trigger will remember, so that when you hear that sound, assume that body position, smell or taste that smell or taste, or see those images, or even imagine those images, that will trigger a traumatic response to help you escape it, because it's not a disorder, it's an escape function. So we would propagate that you take away the D of post-traumatic stress and call it PTSO, post-traumatic stress order. And to sum up the depotentiation, while we still have time, the amygdala, which is the safety center of the brain, which is what encodes the connection between a stimuli and a reaction. When that happens, if you want to depotentiate that, then you can use the tapping or the havening when the AMPA receptor is activated. So if you want to haven or tap for a flight phobia, and you ask the person, do you feel like you're in a plane now? And they go, no. So do you feel any fear? And they go, no. Doing a tapping or havening right there and then is not going to have any effect. That's like turning on the shower and not getting in. So if they learn how to haven or tap on themselves and they do it when they're in the plane, or if you watch a movie with a plane, or if you use hypnosis to make them feel as if they're in the plane, then you can start the delta wave. And now we're getting a little bit of science here, which you do not have to remember. If you enjoy it, remember it. And if you don't like it, think about something sweet. So a calcineurin channel is opened in the amygdala thanks to the delta wave, and it will depotentiate the AMPA receptor by dephosphorylizing them through the calcium. So those specific synapses that connect that stimuli to that reaction are actually cleaned away, which means they do not come back.
Yeah, so that is our experience. It is, I mean, whatever you bring up to your mind, I mean, what you connect to will be dissolved, will be depotentiated, and will not come back. It can be layers that comes something else after. It's not that everything will go away, but that layer that you were connected to, or that stimuli that you were connected, that will be resolved, or even
So 5 minutes, people, 5 minutes left, 5 precious minutes that we share together in this world right now without even knowing who's the president of a certain country yet. We have 2 questions. We will answer them, but we would love for you to start writing in the chat anything that you're bringing with you. Now, remember, there's a second webinar where we give you the solution to everything in life, and also where you can actually get certified. And that is in a month from now, more or less, and you sign up for it on the same page as before. And if you don't, no soup for you. So the question was, how does frontal occiput release from stress release touch for health modalities connect relate to the forehead? That's a very complex question with many varieties in it. I would just say that the forehead stretch massages some blood back into your frontal cortex, which goes offline when you're stressed. So you're basically getting it back on. And that's what people do. Oh no, I forgot the kids at school a week ago. You go like this, boom, because you're trying to get some blood back into your frontal cortex, so that you can explain to your significant other why there are no kids and why didn't she notice.
Yeah, we do. Oh no, yeah, what did I do? Oh no, we do all these things, whether we like it or not. This is just put into a system, and that's why it makes it more, let's say, efficient, because we do something and do it for at least 5 minutes. And doing the tapping sequence twice takes more or less 5 minutes, which makes that we do it. So coming back to that with what you need to think of. So whether it is a body sensation, or it is a traumatic memory, or it is any kind of memory that comes to you more than you like it, that means that it's something that will be triggered. So you bring that up, you do the tapping, but you don't open the door wide open. You don't need to. Just connect a little bit. We say, just connect ever so lightly to whatever it is bothers you. And that is because we started working with people who have been severely, according to themselves and their reactions, severely traumatized. So, and if you open that door wide, people will suffer. And our mentor, Dr. Carl Johnson, who nothing of this work would be done without him, who is a professor of psychology, he said, no more suffering. People have suffered enough. That's why we don't go into prolonged exposure therapy. We don't ask people to say what they have lived through. Not that we are not interested, just that it's not necessary.
And that's why we could treat people in large groups, 400, 500, 600, 10,000 people, not a problem. So Gunilla, can you put the link for December in the
Sure.
chat? Somebody was asking, what about the hippocampus? What about that? Well, what about it? Well, the hippocampus is a part of the brain that actually stores memories. So memories can be stored in the hippocampus, and your working memory, I believe, is to be there. And there are studies that indicate that when you are stressed, your hippocampus will shrink, which means you're getting a smaller and smaller working memory, which is like having a desk normally that is this size, where you put all your papers and you do your work. And then your desk shrinks, which means all of a sudden you can only have 2 papers on your desk. So you start losing your short-term memory. You walk into a room going, why was I walking into this room? And then you realize you don't have any pants on. So that's a sign that you're stressed, right? Or you're just in the wrong room.
In a very bad mood.
Yeah. So there you go. 29, please do write something in the chat. Thanks, Kurt. We love you too. And somebody, Lillian would love to know more about the science and the explanation. Well, actually, we are revealing all of it in the next webinar. So that's a cliffhanger for you. And that's the reason we keep this at 90 minutes is because it just becomes too long. I mean, we're all overfed with our own faces in squares on screens, you know. But one day we will meet in live and we will stand there and it'll be on a plateau or in Peru in the Maya or you know, on a beach or just on the frozen lake in Sweden, and we will laugh together and we will have some glögg. You can Google that.
Thank you so much, all, and thank you, Natalia, for, you know, hope to see you again in Canada. Yes, and hope to see you everywhere, wherever you are, or here in the screen, or when we meet live dancing somewhere finally. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of you were asking also, you know, reaching out saying you wanted to talk some more, you wanted to chat about some things. Actually, I can stay 5-10 minutes after now, but we will end the recording and we will end the session officially. I don't know if you can stay, Gunilla, as well. That would be swell.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can be.
Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll stop the recording, we'll end this session. So we will simply ask you to wave as if this is the last time we say goodbye. Bye-bye.
Hej då så länge.
Hej då så länge.
There we go, beautiful images.